Do you have a fetish? What is a fetish? Have you ever thought about when you're looking at somebody and you're like, oh, that is an attractive feature about some sort of person or a thing, and you might be like, I probably prefer that. No, wait, we can't say prefer. Prefer or fetishize, what is the difference? Okay, let's talk about a little bit more what that means. So I've kind of been interested in a lot of these social topics as of recently because it's a lot going on with some of the videos that you see online and a lot of the issues going on in society. And I came across a few where a lot of people argue, obviously, about the dating scene, but more so what people think of particular races, right? And obviously, I have the whole, Oxford study sort of joke thing on here just to get you attracted to the thumbnail. But the point being is that I think, and obviously in many societies and cultures, this is applied in the same way that unequal or unjust sort of application of the word fetishize, I can never say that, is used on particular races of people. So let's talk about what that sort of means. But let's first go into, I guess, what is a fetish versus a preference. So I think a fetish, how I would define it, is you're reducing a person to a particular or single trait, right? So let me give you an example. Race is obviously one of them, right? Or let's say, I have big eyebrows. Let's say I love people with big eyebrows, and that's the only thing I really care about them. Like, I don't care about any other characteristics and stuff like that about them. As long as they have big eyebrows, wow, I am absolutely in love with this person, right? I adore this person so much, right? And so that is kind of like that would be like a fetish that you have, right? You're only particularly focused on that sort of one subject matter of the person as a whole or a thing or an object, right? You could have it doesn't have to be a person in this case, right? There's people that enjoy particular things and like to do them in a certain way that is a fetish. Okay. And then I guess a preference for someone, something, or to do something in a particular way is the attraction to the person as a whole or the activity or the thing as a whole, right? And so an example would be, take my eyebrows for example. Again, I don't care what sort of eyebrows you have. I care about I don't know, your personality or what hobbies you have, right? And so it's rather taking the whole thing and considering it rather than reducing it down to one sort of characteristic or element, right? If you are, I don't know, if you're going to for physical features on a person, right? Maybe you want that they have a big chest or they have a big butt, whatever it may be, right? That might be a fetish if you're only particularly focusing and reducing that one person to that one element of their body, or you could say holistically for this person. And it's hard to really recognize, especially in public. When people go public about maybe their dating preferences or what they think about a particular activity, it's extremely hard to determine whether this person is attracted to it as a whole or they have a fetish for it, right? So that's kind of like the distinguishing sort of like subjective experience that we kind of go through and that we kind of see, right? So yeah, I just wanted to touch on these sort of like definitions. So an example of this, I guess, would be the whole sort of like Oxford study thing, right? It's not real, like it's a joke, and then they continue to put it forward, this sort of thing, right? But an example that I saw that two people were arguing on a blog was it goes something like this. Um, a white person will be attracted to a female or an Asian girl in this case, right? And so they call that the sort of Oxford study, or they call that the fetishization of Asian women, right? But then when the contrary happens, for example, you have an Asian male who is attracted to a white woman or a white female in this case, it is not called a fetishization. It's just they're dating. They have maybe he has a preference, right? And so it sort of switches up when it kind of goes the opposite way, and you swap the genders, right? So the same sort of criticism for something being a fetish applied towards Asian women in this case, when you swap the gender and you go the other way around, it is not considered that, at least for the majority of people online that I see, right? So it's reduced only to a certain racial group, and so by doing that in itself, you're essentially you're trying to argue that there's a fetishization among racial groups essentially, and that it is usually never applied to white people or could not be applied to white people. But that in itself, it is like um, a racial reductionism of white people. So in that case, it is a fetish. Essentially, is what you are arguing, right? So let's go over some data points that I found from OkCupid. It's like a long time data collection platform that they used to do a bunch of dating studies and stuff on. Um, there's not a whole lot to go off of here. that I could find related to this sort of like subjective experience and also this sort of like double standard being applied. It's more so just what people think and what people say online that I gather the sort of topic from. But I think that the main ones are these sort of points here where they are extremely high, I guess, like averages or response rate. So essentially, what I gathered here is black men have the lowest rate, white men have the highest response rate, and they're like just strong correlations overall. I found this sort of category here to be interesting. This line, so it's the response rate between black women and men of any race, for that matter, is extremely high. So I don't know. It's not that it surprises me or anything, but it's just that whole line just kind of like sticks out, and like also these lines here also stick out particularly a lot. Other women and Native American women and all other types of men of any race, right? So yeah, and then the other ones tend to not really like scale up or scale down. So yeah, that's just some data to give you about like the response rates and attractiveness that people have towards one another, specifically based on race and obviously subjective. But what is the white default? So I was looking at some studies at Stanford that they did a long, long time ago, and they are called attractiveness studies. And you basically try to gauge what is the general trend in the sort of, I guess, like dating scene, you could call it, or within the greater, I guess, like speck of the world, right? What is the attractiveness of races looking like to one another, age, gender, all that sort of stuff, right? All those variables. And they kind of coined this term called the white default. And essentially, it goes like this: you're going to treat the physical features of a white person as a neutral baseline, right? And so when you treat that as a baseline, you're comparing it to basically every other sort of race, gender, whatever sort of variable. So, let's say white people they have very big faces or something like that, and I don't know, Latino people they have like very small faces, right? You're going to use that baseline as a comparison to determine whether or not you're attractive to this person, and obviously that can play a lot into the fetishization and stuff like that because you're discriminating based off one key difference between a person that is, their face in this case, right? So that's a physical feature and so socially, uh, they don't really consider this like a fetish when you're calling them not because you're comparing it against the baseline of white people, right? So kind of like what I said earlier, it's kind of like this racial reductionism of we have this sort of standard that we're going to apply against all other people because I don't know for whatever reason that they just use white people, I guess, like as a baseline or example in this case, and we're going to use that comparison and then find the features that we want, pick them out, and then sort of base our fetish off of that difference between the sort of comparison that we have, if that makes sense. So yeah, that is something interesting that I found in some of those studies. So what are the core issues here? I guess that I think are happening or what's going on. The last one I talked about a lot in previous videos as well. It's more so like the socio-economic discomfort between people dating and social media is kind of playing a big factor in terms of how people choose their dating partner. I can give you an example. I talked about ABG marketing in one of my first few videos on this channel, and essentially it goes there are a lot of Asian female sort of like tech content creators that get not distributed but hired by these companies to make marketing and videos for them, and that's because social media has put them kind of like in a pigeonhole where they're the key focus and I guess like quote unquote like super popular with the sort of like tech niche community, right? And so when you get that sort of effect, you kind of get like everyone should. I mean, you kind of get this thing like everyone should date Asian women or everyone should date black women. Everyone should date, So it kind of just like goes in a circle, and so that's kind of like the niche community that has kind of been captured there. And then obviously, I think just like the select critique of races based off of like the base case of a white person, right? If you think that, back to the example, if a white man dates an Asian woman versus a Asian man dating a white woman, the same thing should be applied. Are you reducing the features of this person to their race, gender, whatever it may be, down to that, and that's the only reason why you're doing it? If that is the case, then you should obviously, critique that or say, "No, I don't think that's right. I think that is a fetish, and I disagree or agree with that." Right? It should not be applied based off the base case of the race, right? If somebody, back to it again, it's like white. I need to go through this. White male to Asian female versus Asian male to white female, the same criticism should be applied in this case. It does not matter, whether they like each other or not, or they have, some sort of. It matters if it's a preference versus a fetish because of the reduction, right? You don't want to date somebody specifically only because they have, a lot of money, or they don't, or they have a house, or they don't, right? That shouldn't really be the overall general factor. So yeah, if it's harmful and reductive, it is a fetish, and that's like sort of it. I don't know if I'm gonna get backlash for this video. I just wanted to make something on it because I saw a lot of people arguing about it on like forums, blog posts, and stuff. So I thought it was an interesting social topic to talk about a bit. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, what you think about, I guess, my opinions here, and yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.